Sorry for the bit of silence there to open, dear listeners. I was patting myself on the back because we are back for the second week in a row for the first time in a long time here on the Ohio State of Mind. Alongside Tyler Danburg, I'm Caleb Spinner. And Tyler, we are back with another episode under this new format that we're talking about. A little bit of a rush format. Well, not rushed. A little bit of a quick tempo, no huddle format here. 10 to 15 minutes, our new episode once a week on Fridays now. No longer on SoundCloud, on SGSR TV, and the SGSR Podcast Network. But it's good to be back with you for another week. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Tournament implications for the volleyball team. They took care of their first round win. And then, of course, men's and women's basketball opening their Big Ten schedule as well this weekend. So, Ty, first off, how you doing? I know you've been at Value City Arena this morning, and you'll head back later today. We're recording this on Thursday, so you're part of two games, a doubleheader for men's basketball and women's basketball.
Doing great, Caleb. And I think we have to mention that this is our 1 year anniversary. Little did we know
really?
A year ago today, we were, well, not today, but a year ago right around now, we were in the Ivy Court basement in South Bend, Indiana, recording episode number 1.
Well, I'll be honest, Tyler, I didn't get you anything for our anniversary. It completely slipped my mind. I know. I see your frustrated reaction there on the Zoom camera.
You're just saving it. You're saving the gift for the Christmas special, right?
Yeah, you know what? Yes, and hopefully this is not how long down the road when it actually happens. Hopefully I don't do this to my wife in a few years' time. I hope that I'm remembering anniversaries at least a few years down the road when, no offense to you, but the punishment for missing is a little bit more severe than a swipe on a Zoom camera.
Yeah, I'm not gonna begrudge you for getting the 1 year anniversary podcast gift.
You know what? Even when I'm married, I still might send you an anniversary gift for our State of Mind anniversary here. Let's move into women's volleyball here because this was big for Ohio State. They took care of business in their opening round of the tournament against Minnesota, 3-1. They dropped the first, but then won the last three back-to-back, 25-21, 25-21, and 25-19 with the markings there, losing that opening set, or opening frame, if you will, 25-22. But Ohio State looked great. 67 kills as a team, just about 29.8% on the hitting. This was just an all-around performance, Tyler. I was looking for some creative way to say it, but Ohio State, they came back and they played really good volleyball, especially in those last three frames.
Yeah, they dropped the first set 25-22 after it had been tight the entire set. And then they go out and dominate sets 2 through 4. And Emily Londot, a big reason as to why that was the case. 29 kills, a career high, a season high for the junior from Utica, Ohio. And not only that, Caleb, that's the most kills by an Ohio State player in a match since 2004. Not
to mention she was hitting at 50% through the game, which was the team high, and looking over at the Minnesota stats, the game high for both teams. So an impressive performance from her. They have a lot of options, Tyler. We talked about this last week. This is our second week of talking about both volleyball and basketball as the primary focuses of this show. And we talked about all the different weapons that Ohio State has, everybody who can contribute in their own meaningful ways. But this was big going into this opening game of the tournament to see Londot step up, to see her lead this team, and to see her play at what I would arguably say is her best, if not close to her best. We don't know if she has another level beyond this, but it's good to see with all the lights on her, all the marbles on the line here. It was good to see her step up.
And she needed to, because Minnesota had a great front row trio of Taylor Landfair. They also had Jenna Wenis, and then looking at Melanie Schaffmaster, their setter. So they were going to need a big performance out of one of Ohio State's outside hitters, and they got it from their best one in Emily Londot.
Of course, Ohio State moving on in the tournament. They'll play again on Saturday against a really quality opponent.
Yeah, they're going to be going up against the number one team in the country, the Texas Longhorns, on Saturday. And how about this for a full circle moment? The Buckeyes and the Longhorns met each other for the first two matches of each other's seasons. The Longhorns dominated Ohio State in both those matches. Caleb, you were there with your mom. Shout out Mrs. Spinner. We were there for Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio, and Texas put on an absolute show in a really hostile environment. Look for Ohio State to come out trying to get some revenge on Texas and the Longhorns.
Shout out you and your black suit and red tie, I think I remember you wearing at that time. Always a good look for you.
Bingo.
But this would also be one of those revenge matches, not to look ahead at football, but Ohio State, Michigan could have a potential to play off in the national championship. Another one of those full circle matches, but this has even more on the line considering how much of a blowout it was at the first part of the season to lose both of those games too. Not only did they lose the opening match to the Longhorns, but they played them again and lost again. So that's one of those ones where you look back to it and it's a really good measuring stick of how far the team has come since then. Moving over now to the hardwood, staying on the hardwood, I should say, but moving arenas across the street to the Schottenstein Center. Both basketball teams open Big Ten conference play this weekend. We'll start with number 25 men's basketball as they take on Rutgers at home on Thursday evening. The Buckeyes are 6-2 with losses to then number 17 San Diego State at the Maui Invitational and number 8 Duke in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Side note here, I think that speaks a lot to Ohio State that their only 2 losses of the year are against pretty high-ranked top opponents in college basketball. The new additions, Tanner Holden, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Isaac Likely, are playing a huge part for Ohio State, but so are the returning leaders like Zed Key. He's handling himself despite being a focus now rather than that under-the-radar option that he was entering last season, that opener against Akron. But the Big Ten, as you and I both know well enough, having done this show for a year now, that the Big Ten is an unforgiving conference. It requires your absolute best to succeed. What wrinkles does Ohio State need to iron out if they're going to be competitive this season in the conference?
Foul trouble, Caleb, has to be the biggest one. If you go back to that Duke game, partner, Zed Key was in foul trouble from the get-go. The star center cannot afford to be in foul trouble, especially early on. He got into 2 quick fouls, and then Chris Holtman really had to manage his time. Same thing with Bryce Sensabaugh, the star off the bench, Ohio State's leading scorer, the star freshman. He only played about 14, 15 minutes in that game, and he was on limited minutes because he was in foul trouble early, and he ended up fouling out. So foul trouble is one thing, and then especially looking at the Rutgers game specifically, playing clean basketball. The Scarlet Knights have a top 10 defense in all of college basketball, so Ohio State's going to have to play clean tonight, Thursday night, to get the win.
Weapons don't mean a thing if they have to stay on the bench with foul trouble the whole game, right?
Right, and with Ohio State's depth, they have a deep team, but Zed Key is almost an irreplaceable type of player. Now, Felix Okpara, the next center off the bench, has added a really nice layer, especially going back to that St. Francis game. He had a double-double off the bench, but Zed Key's very unique, and he's very physical. And you just cannot afford to have him in foul trouble, or at least in foul trouble in the first half.
Nobody can quite raise the roof like Zed Key to reference his iconic, I would say, celebration that he's had during his time here at Ohio State. But let's switch over to the teams here. Number 3, women's basketball. They also start their conference schedule. It's not on Thursday, but instead it's on Sunday, December 11th. They'll host Michigan State at home. The Buckeyes enter that game with the Spartans, a perfect 9-0 record, having dominated earlier this very day. But the biggest wins of the season so far include the opening game against number 5 Tennessee, which I think very few people expected them to win, as well as the Big Ten ACC Challenge on the road against number 18 Louisville. But injuries have been a minor part of the story as well. They've been there, but they haven't quite caused any major ramifications so far. Of course, J.C. Sheldon and Emma Shoemate both served time on the bench due to respective injuries during these opening 9 games. But what all is Ohio State capable of when they're at full strength? When you have everybody coming off the bench, playing their roles and all contributing the way that they were meant to?
Well, they're capable of being one of the best top teams in the country. There's no doubt about it. They're up to number 3 in the AP Top 25 poll, which, Caleb, we know, the highest ranking in program history in the Top 25 poll. They did have Emma Shoemate back on the floor Thursday morning in the 92-36 win against New Hampshire. J.C. Sheldon was not available for what is now the second straight game, but again, it looks like she's starting to progress a little bit in her recovery. But nonetheless, outside of those two, Ohio State is still at full strength. And Sheldon definitely has that big of a presence when she's out on the floor. But they are capable of being one of the nation's best in all of college basketball. And look for them to be one of the best. when they get everybody at full strength. But even so, right now, down one or two players, Ohio State and Kevin McGuff still have the ability to play 8, 9 players deep. And that's if they even need to. They're well conditioned to the point where they can go to 6, 7 players and just go 2 or 3 off the bench. So they're deep.
Yeah, certainly in a spot to take the full share of that regular season title rather than sharing it with Minnesota like they did last year. Another thing you wanted to touch on, Tyler, when we were having our pre-production meeting here, you wanted to touch on wrestling, which they've been doing some good stuff over at the Covelli Center as well. But let's give the grapplers their due here as they go into a Sunday match against Kent State.
Yeah, taking a look at the wrestlers, they had a very good weekend at the Cliff Keen Invite. They come in to face Kent State at home in front of a Ruckus Covelli Center crowd, ranked 3rd in the country. And one of the wrestlers that I think we should definitely feature is Sammy Sasso, named the Big Ten Wrestler of the Week. He won the 149 division at the Cliff Keen in Vegas. He went 5-0 and was the outstanding wrestler in all of the tournament. And looking at Sammy Sasso, he's pretty much had just one setback so far this year. It came against Virginia Tech in the duels. He lost to an unranked freshman, yet he has been able to bounce back big time. Look for Sasso to have another huge weekend against the Golden Flashes in a non-con matchup.
And you know what? Great wrestler, Sammy Sasso, but you got to expect that some setbacks are going to come somewhere. I would rather them have them rear their ugly heads at the start of the season so he has as much time as possible to get them worked out, get those kinks out of the hose before it comes time to spray into the national tournament. So I think maybe this is a good order for him to have a little bit of adversity at the start of the year and then be able to take that time to work them out. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. It's huge for all the wrestlers right now, especially going up against Kent State and then taking off next week to go to New Orleans for the collegiate duels. It's better to get these out of the way, if you're going to get them out of the way, before you head into Big Ten play, because that's just a whole nother notch. When you get back into the dual flow and when you go into the Big Ten slate, when you start your conference schedule up against Indiana, you'll end up facing Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan in January, and then it only gets tougher from there. So it's important to get some of those matches out of the way and still get a feel for the mat as well in non-conference match play, and then going to compete in open tournaments as well.
That'll do it for us this week on the Ohio State of Mind. Make sure you tune in for another new episode next Friday at 6 a.m. But until then, for Tyler Danburg, I'm Caleb Spinner. That's the show. We're out of here.